Hi, I'm Greg Ulan with Reynolds and Reynolds, and this is Connected. Today, I'm very excited. I get two in-studio guests for the first time, Paul J. Daly and Kyle Mountsier, both from ASOTU. I can't wait to have this conversation, guys. Appreciate you joining me.
Always. Love it.
So good to be here.
Yes.
What a great studio.
No, appreciate it. The team that put it together, like I still, every time I come in here, I'm just in awe of how well they put it together. So appreciate the compliment. They worked hard.
Makes me think like we need to up our game.
Yeah, we're like on a thing. Okay, here we go.
Mics are great. It's good to be here. Yeah.
No, appreciate it. No, it should be a good conversation. But one of the things I wanted to get into with you guys, I mean, you're all over the place. We can go into a million different things, which maybe we will. But I wanted to start with this concept. We were talking a little bit ago about really just this idea of mega. How did you phrase it? Mega branding, right?
Like
or
macro. Yeah, like macro branding. We were talking about what the value is and how people try to find value in building a macro brand or an umbrella brand, because it's real easy to slip into what gets me we like cause and response kind of things. And just in general, I think in life and business, I want to start working out and see a result immediately. I want to, put something for sale and sell it immediately. And I've always I just kind of wired to think of what's the meaning behind it? Why do we do it? Why do people feel a certain way about a person or a product or a service and
An industry.
Industry. And how do we not only do a good job by telling the whole story, long tail, at a high level, but how do we get other people to kind of step behind it and say, yeah, I believe that too.
Yeah.
And just like how that is one of the main sources of building a macro brand is telling the story well, having enough people get behind it and say, I believe that too. And then, kind of starts to snowball from there.
Yeah. And we were talking about it in the context of, more than cars, right?
Yep.
But maybe before we get into that, can you give another example of, maybe an industry or something that you've seen executed really well in this kind of macro brand perspective?
Yeah, I mean, you've got, let's take the two most recent ones,
Okay.
right? How many people in our country own a duck call now that didn't before the Robinsons became a thing, right? And it was a docuseries about a family that does a thing, right?
I wouldn't call it a docuseries.
Yeah, maybe not a docuseries, right? It was a
reality
show.
Yeah.
But that also did something for the brand of the persona of who they are.
Sure.
Right? It kind of made it cool to be that persona, or if not cool, attractive, to be a redneck, right? It was like, hey, I might not have grown up that way, but I'm gonna get a duck call. I'm wearing flannel now, all that type of stuff. So that's one version of it. The other version is for instance, what Netflix has done with tennis or F1.
Yeah.
Right. They've built a show around why is this an incredible industry, right? The tennis industry as a show with what Netflix built with that. The racing industry, because it's interesting when Drive to Survive became successful.
Yeah.
Not just F1 got the benefit of that. Now Netflix and F1 came together to build that, but if you look at the numbers on the re-attraction to NASCAR, the re-attraction to IndyCar, racing as an industry saw the benefit of a macro brand play that was done by Netflix and F1. And so when you think about these, we were talking about Got Milk,
Yeah.
right? That was a whole bunch of cow farmers that got together and said, you know what, we as an industry, we need to sell some milk, right? Because that's how we make money. And gave themselves kind of this new thesis on the health and the viability of why milk is important to us. And so there's some few examples right there where you're playing more than with just Team Mercedes.
Yeah.
Right?
So what is it about, because the first two examples you gave are obviously centered around individuals, right? People, personification of an industry or a lifestyle or whatever it is. What is it about people that really makes it stick I guess, right? Because in both those examples, obviously it's a big television network. There's a big audience, and people liked it, so they kept going back, and the audience grows. But at the end of the day, the people are why everybody watched it, right? Yeah. So what is it about the individual? And Get Milk's a great example, and that was, that's going back a ways, but that one wasn't so much about people. But these last two, and a lot of the trends that you see now are centered around the stories of people. So what is it?
Well, I'm going to push back on that because I'm thinking of the Got Milk campaigns, and I just remember celebrities with milk mustaches on the back of magazines.
Yes.
And I think that's where it becomes a human thing. With the F1, with Duck Dynasty, one of my favorite marketers, Seth Godin, says it this way. He says, people like us do things like this. And when we connect with a belief, right? For Duck Dynasty, if I were to think about what's the belief? It's like family is important, right? Doing things together is important. And all the other kind of antics that kind of stem from that, but also serious issues, also issues of faith, also issues of business and entrepreneurship stem off of that. F1, I never watched, I watched half an episode of Drive to Survive.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know. I'm going to get kicked out of here any minute.
He goes, oh, really?
Oh, really?
No, so I'm excited about doing it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so I think it's a human sentiment and a human reason that always ties someone to a macro brand for some reason. People like us do things like this. It triggers a core belief in you that says either I am like that too, or I aspire to be that way. And I think that is the same, why do we wear a certain type of clothing, right? For a lot of people, it's because it says something about me.
Sure.
It says I value this, right? You can look at what somebody's wearing, they value sports, they value fashion, right? They value a good deal, right? And so it's always a belief. It's always a human element, and I think you can map back any brand and say it says something, the kind of music you listen to, the kind of car you drive, says something about you. And sometimes that thing is the brand says, I'm responsible.
Sure.
In one way or another. So no matter what it is, I think we could probably put anyone on the table and we can map it back. Apple's an easy one. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, it was think different. It's just people like me approach things in a different way, a more creative way, in a way that says, I'm not satisfied with this. It should be this way. It should be aesthetically pleasing. It should be highly functional. It should be a little bit irreverent to what the establishment is. Mm-hmm. And so it's always ties back to a human. And we could go down the line, and I think the three of us together could always.
Well, Netflix, the Drive to Survive was uniquely human. It's Gunther Team Haas. It's Ricardo and his antics, and it's all the people that are a part of these teams and this broader thing. It's not about who won one race or actually they rarely show the points or the scores. It's all about what happened with the people behind the scenes.
Would you wear an F1 Drive to Survive t-shirt?
All day.
And what do you think? Because what would you say about yourself by doing that? What would you be communicating to everyone else? I'm willing to wear this shirt because I believe in this. It says this about something I believe.
Yeah, I think that one is maybe more I'm attracted to the people of this thing, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's because they
so an element of community.
They care. Yeah. There's a community that's hey, have you seen Drive to Survive? You immediately have 30 minutes of conversation with that person. There's Greg and I could go on and on, right?
Knowing you, it's because you're a soccer fan. Are you a soccer fan?
I'm not a soccer. I don't dislike soccer.
But I don't have anything against it.
I'm not a passionate soccer fan.
Me neither. But Kyle has actually taught me how to love the game of soccer a little bit. I haven't been to a game. I have a feeling when we go to a game together, it's going to convert me. But there's a level of fanaticism and we win and lose together and we're passionate about this and it could go either way, right? There's a little bit of risk taking and fanaticism to it. It kind of reminds me what you're explaining of the soccer people that I know.
Absolutely.
My first experience with soccer fans was in Toronto. Have you ever been to a game up in Toronto?
No, but they're great too.
Yeah. So we're on this bus. My wife and I were on this bus, and we had just literally the day before ran the Toronto Marathon. So we're a little weak in the legs, right? And we're on this bus, and it keeps getting more and more packed because we're heading downtown, and that's where the stadium is. And it keeps getting more and more packed. And by the time we get there, we can't move. We're standing like this, and everybody's screaming. I'm just what is going on? And that was really my first interaction with these crazy professional soccer fans. I'm wow, that is awesome. I want to be a soccer fan.
I love the way you say that, professional soccer fans. That's exactly right.
That's it, right? but it made me want to enjoy that excitement, right?
Yes,
and I think you could do a docuseries or a reality show on soccer fans. There probably is one. I don't know.
There's a bunch of them. Yes, absolutely. And I think what is I agree with the fact that it's connection to people. So it's either like, how do I connect with the person of that environment or with the other people that are attracted to that same thing, right? And I was telling someone the other day, I was like, everyone loves a good story, right? What do we do at Christmas time and Thanksgiving around the table with our families? What are we doing right now? We're telling good stories.
Right.
They have arcs. They have characterization and a problem and a resolution always. And the reality is that good stories are what connect us all. And so I think that each one of those has a unique story to tell that draws us in. It goes, what's going to happen next? Why is that good for me or them? Or what was hard about that? I have this thesis that as we grow deeper in joy and sorrow, the other one deepens just as great, right?
Sure.
And stories attract us to that. They attract us to how much joy is found in the story and how much sorrow is found in the story. And as humans, the deeper each of those grow and the wider the gap on like how deep your sorrow and your joy can go, the more we experience things deeply. And so stories draw us into that. And they attract us to things.
When you're crafting a story and you're writing a script, or you're like saying like, I like that movie, I don't like that movie, they say that you can only connect with a story to the depth of the main characters or one of the characters' deepest moment, like saddest moment.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
And it's the truth. If you think about like, why did that movie kind of fall flat, right? Let me give you an example. The Martian with Matt Damon, right?
Oh,
An
man.
actor. I really like him. He makes me laugh. I think he's a good actor. The Martian was one of the worst movies I ever saw. You know why? Because at the end of the movie, when you're like, oh, he's not going to make it back, why should we feel bad about that? Because his mom's going to miss him, basically was the premise of it.
Yeah.
Right? And for me, I was like, that's it? I mean, like, everyone's got a mom that's going to miss him, right? Like, and so that's, I didn't like the movie.
Yeah.
I didn't connect with the character. I was like, oh, I mean, single guy goes to Mars, right? Like, you knew what you're signing up for. Of course, your mom's going to miss you. Our moms
Right.
will all miss us. But yeah.
So how do you tie all this? So I'm trying to think of this, and you know, you gave some examples earlier, Apple, and there's plenty of brands out there that do a great job with marketing, right? But how do you elevate your marketing to this macro level, this categorical level, right? You mentioned Got Milk, right? A bunch of dairy farmers get together and say, we got to sell more dairy. Or you mentioned F1 and how it was targeted to increase awareness of F1, but ultimately it increased awareness of all racing, right? All professional racing. So as a marketer, right? So if I'm fill in the blank dealership group, right? And I'm interested obviously in promoting me, right? How do I go above that, right? Because ultimately, what I think I'm hearing you say, and if I'm off, then tell me. But what I think I'm hearing you say is better awareness is good for everybody, right? Awareness of the industry is good for everybody. It could be automotive, it could be any industry, but just awareness of the industry is good. You know, rising tide comes, it brings all the ships up, right? So how do you almost get out of your own way, right? And focus less on the 30 days that are in front of me and more on, okay, how do we lift our industry up so that people see us collectively in a different light?
I think the very first step, non-negotiable, is that you have to be willing, and I know this may sound like maybe overly practical or like an obvious one, you have to have patience. You have to know that, because when we think marketing in automotive, oftentimes we think of a 30-day cycle. We think of specials and offers and like, you know, especially the larger your group gets, and especially once you like take a step into the publics, there's very little patience. And if you're a public, you're not afforded patience because the market isn't patient.
Right.
So if you're going to implement something, it better show an uptick or a J curve within one earnings report.
Yeah.
Or you're going to get shut down. Private groups have more flexibility here. Smaller groups and smaller stores, I think, even have more flexibility. But patience, because how do you do it? The first thing is that you understand you're planting and cultivating a garden, right? You're not buying head of lettuce, right? So
Yeah.
you're going to have to till the ground. You're going to have to plant the seed. You're going to have to water it. You're going to have to care for it. When it grows a little bit, you can't just leave it alone. You're going to have to wait till it gets strong enough. And then eventually it gets big enough that you can swing on it, right?
Sure.
And it grows fruit and you can put it, you know, all the things, sit under the shade. So patience is the first practical thing. And I think a lot of people can get caught up in the allure of like, I want a great brand. I want people to think of me this way. I want people, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Life doesn't work that way because building a brand with your community is literally like cultivating a relationship, and that will never happen fast. You can tell first interviews, first dates, right? You can look like a hero to anybody, right? And most people are like, we'll see, especially if you're a business, especially if you're a car dealership.
Yeah.
And so patience, and then you have to think a level above the product you sell. You literally have to start thinking outside the product you sell.
Well, and I would add, I think you have to expand who you view as your audience, right? You think about our industry, especially. You mentioned community, and you guys use that word a lot, right? And you're building a community. I think that's awesome. But that community isn't just car dealers, right? That community isn't just consumers, right?
So market buyers.
Yeah.
Right.
If I'm a car dealer, that's my audience, generally speaking. But who else is my audience, right? The rest of my audience could be legislators, right? It could be those people that are creating laws that have a big impact on us. It could be our manufacturers, right? It could be manufacturers that haven't even come to the U.S. yet. It could be manufacturers that haven't started yet. So I think the audience also needs to broaden a lot when you think about sort of that macro level, that category level, because it's not just the people that are going to buy a car within the next 3 months.
Right. And I think there's a lot of local, like, it might be easier for someone to start like in the center, right? And you're in the center. And then you have the people that work immediately around you, and then the consumers you interact with on a regular basis. And then geographically, you have your other small businesses. You have the spouses of the people who work for you is a major one that often gets overlooked, because we all know that if your spouse or significant other likes the place that you work, you are much more likely to stay there and be fulfilled there.
Absolutely.
It goes essential services, police, fire, the things that make a community tick, school teachers. Right, you start thinking of, even if they're never going to buy a car from you, right? I think it's a little easier to think small, right, and just start to look out. But interesting, you brought up manufacturers that may not exist yet.
Sure.
Because when you think of like companies like Fisker, VinFast coming into the market, looking for the best partnership, right? And who are we going to award these new points to, right? Obviously, some risk involved with that, but who do you think everyone's going to say like, go here, but a dealer that has a great brand and a great brand reputation, those new manufacturers are going to say like, I want to like hitch my wagon there, right? And just try to catch that tailwind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like here's a clear example, right? Is if everybody believed in a dealer's community that they were selling cars, that is an extremely fleeting value proposition to a community, right? It might be important for someone in a moment.
Right. It's also a commodity.
Right? And it's a commodity, right? It's the reason why, I mean, you were talking earlier, like, hey, our SAR is going to maybe max out at 17.5 to 18 million vehicles,
that's how many we're going to sell.
Because that's how many people are going to be in the market at a given time to turn up, like it's just... until we have population explosion for some weird reason, right?
No sooner than 20 years from now.
Exactly. No sooner than 20 years from now is our SAR going to get bigger, right? And so, so I think like if that was to be transferred to that dealership sells freedom or that dealership sells hope, right? Like if you could transfer as a dealership the same emotion that Kia transferred during their Super Bowl commercial to millions and millions of people, but to your local community on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, your community would feel a loss if you weren't there.
Yeah.
Right? Not like I guess I'll go somewhere else. They would be like, dang it, who let them leave?
Yeah.
Right? And if you can start to transfer what the sale is, right? What people are buying of you, it's a totally different value prop to the culture.
Yeah.
When I think about more than cars in particular, well, first of all, more than X, love people more than X is like, it's a universal that can go cross vertical. It doesn't love people more than the software you sell.
Sure.
Love people more than the cars. Love people more than the service that you have. Right? Is universal. So that's a first. Like, it's a universal story that people love.
Yeah.
But I think more importantly, like if that's a reality for our industry, then our industry is no longer selling cars or servicing cars. It's providing care. Right? It's providing hope. It's providing connection. It's providing culture and community and all of the things that are way deeper in our psyche, in our emotive core as people, as humanity, than just like the next time that you sign a piece of paper to say, I'll take that one in my driveway. Right.
Yeah. So you obviously work with a lot of dealers across the country. You've heard a lot of stories. You've documented a lot of the stories. So maybe give a couple, if you don't mind, or if you have any top of mind, a couple of examples of dealers that have done this successfully, right? The way you were speaking about it, I sensed some passion and probably some experience with dealers or entrepreneurs of some kind that have done this, have accomplished this. So do you have any tangible kind of takeaway examples of, because it goes beyond, being the supplier for the police cars in the town, right? I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. So
that's important.
It is important, but
however, right, somebody's going to be the supplier for the police cars, right? They need police cars, and it will be supplied, and it doesn't mean that you've done anything special, right? I'll give you an example. For a dealer, was actually he was acquired by a public at one point. He was one of my very first agency clients, automotive agency clients, and his name's Todd Caputo. He's still in the industry. He's kicking around, living that consultant life of banks, and he's loving his position right now. But second generation car dealer, and has become a very close friend. But for 40 years, he was known as Todd Caputo, the used car king, right? So, I mean, you can kind of picture the gimmick. There was no crown involved, but maybe, but not on his head. And so it's like, let's give you cars with price and payment. And, like I bought 120 Impalas. Remember those? 120 Impalas, and they're all $399, and they're this and this and this. And it was always like a transactional based thing. He wanted to change that. Now, the truth is he had a great reputation in the community. He gave a ton back. His father, who started the dealership, was actually a cop. And so they did, supply all the police cars. However, he wanted to transition and build brand level content, right? Because Todd, the used car king, without Todd, what is the brand?
Right.
It's nothing, right? Todd is gone. Therefore, the brand is rests on his shoulders. And the name of the group was the Sun Auto Group. And we actually built a brand that was around these three words that were SUN, but simple, upfront, and nice. And he moved to a single point of contact, one price model. And he was this major transition. It was always negotiation. It was always like a traditional model. And so what he wanted to do was say, like, the community is important, right? We understand that people want things to be easy and empathetic. And the very first piece of content we released was a Facebook post that had a picture of him. And it said, dealers have been jerking people around for years, right? And I remember we slid this across the desk, and we were like, and he was like,
so you're in a meeting with them, and you're pitching this basically, right?
Yeah.
So you're the agency.
Here's the big idea, right? We're going to put a picture of you. And he's like, well, what if they think it's me, right? Because his whole premise was like, people, like, hey, there's some people that do these things, and I don't do these things. I was like, people already think it's you. Like, there's like a level of awareness, right? Like, you don't get to choose what people think about you. You only get to influence it. And so the copy under that post was some dealers have been jerking people around for years. That's why I've decided to sell cars this way, because I believe this, and
sure.
this. The post went completely viral. He got people to VDPs from a Facebook post that had his picture with that statement on it. And then the next piece of content were people talking about situations at dealerships that went wrong for them and what they actually want, right? And what he started to do from that moment is say, like, just, I understand you. And granted, when you do that and put a flare up, the comment section goes crazy, right? And so, like, there was a lot of that is earned, right? And he acknowledged, like, yeah, like, we probably did jerk some people around, right? 40 years.
Right.
Old school, new school, right?
Sure.
It's this whole thing. But being willing to be honest about that, and then things like when it was their 40th year anniversary, instead of saying, look at us, look how great we are. Instead of talking about yourself, like people don't want to hear about you. They want to hear about them. And so instead it became, oh, well, we're going to turn our 40th anniversary into celebrating 40 years of great community and hold an event called 40 Across 40, where we honor regular people, unsung heroes across the community, teachers, first responders, fitness trainers, right? Foster care workers, because it takes a great community for any business to last for 40 years.
Yeah.
And so that brand became known as a very empathetic, community-centric, transparent place to do business. So that's one that like, it doesn't exist anymore because it was acquired by a public, and then it gets absorbed.
Sure.
But still, the reputation in the community and what was built still has so much to do with how people felt and how people wanted to believe, like who they wanted to be affiliated with, and saying like, yeah, people like us do things like that. People like us talk and think that way. So that's the one that's really close to home. And I feel like I got to have a front row seat to that 2-year journey of going from pitchman to person.
Yeah.
Right. And instead of Todd Caputo, the used car king, hey, Syracuse, it's Todd Caputo, the used car king. Right. Like you can hear it already. I don't even have to like a more empathetic, like simple, upfront, nice, accommodating, caring, compassionate, like very human words and human terms.
Yeah. So I want to geek out a little bit on marketing in general, because the launch pad that you described for that was very simply a problem, right?
Yep.
Like it's a problem, a very specific problem that you articulated extremely clearly to the audience, and you said the problem and they nodded their head and then they went beyond that, right? Then they got passionate about it because it's a problem that really bothers them for whatever reason, right? Whatever experience they had. But I don't know, I didn't count the words, but 6 words, right? You articulated a problem very clearly. And by doing that, I think, from a marketing perspective, this is automotive, this is anywhere, right? But from a marketing perspective, if you can articulate that problem more clearly than anyone else and in a better way that's gets to the heart of the problem, people will just say, you know what? Let me hop on your ship, right? Like
they assume you have the answer.
Yes.
You may not have the answer.
Right.
But if you can articulate the problem really well, people are like, you know how to fix this, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, we I'll brag a little bit, but we, at the dealer group that I was at last, the Nelson group, and the ownership group there and the leadership group there is incredible and had the foresight to go in a similar direction back in, I think, 2018, like, hey, we're going to go one price, single point of contact. And we like to clarify a lot because we tell stories of this because they're close to home.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way for everybody.
No.
But we see a really clear path to this type of level of branding from that right now in our current status as an industry. And we ran this commercial where basically it was like, I bought these boxing gloves, right? And
I can see it already.
Yeah. So I basically bought these boxing
I've never heard this story actually.
and I just said, hey, sometimes going to a dealership feels like a fight, right? And so I just held these boxing gloves up. And I was like, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I threw the boxing gloves at the camera, and then just like went after like what the resolution was. And I think that everybody can feel that. Like whenever you go into any sort of negotiation,
Sure.
It just feels like a fight, right? And so we were able to overcome that. I'll give the other example, which is a little bit more on like the community branded side, is one of our incredible friends is Patrick Abad. Some of them know him, Beaver Toyota and Mr. Beaver and Linda Beaver, incredible people, but out of Cumming, Georgia. And, they, 2 years ago, he decided like, hey, I am going to take basically all of his traditional media spend and move it all into how do we impact the community? Where does the community need us most? And I was like, you got to tell more people about that. And like, it's story after story of like, person came in, we just took care of it for him. We went into this. We bought a car. We bought a car for this person. We took care of their service bill. I can't even describe all the things, but the thing that I think was the probably the biggest impact from that is not all of the stories of the community people or the golf tournaments that we've been a part of all the, the community. But then there was, I get a little bit emotional talking about it, so hang with me if I get there. Right. But sometimes when I say that, I don't get emotional because I prep myself right. But there was a lady on their team that had some craziness with her husband, and then also with her life, that the car either was broken down or totaled, and essentially he was like, hey, like, she'd been with them forever. She's like, I'm going to take care of the car. And he kind of had a budget set aside and started doing some research on some cars at wholesale. And he's like sitting in his office one day, and kind of some of the team got wind that might be happening. Mm-hmm. And the entire team in the store came to him with a check, I think like multiple thousand more, that the team had raised without his awareness to purchase that vehicle free and clear for that person. And like, when you transfer that level of ownership of care into your employees, imagine what it's doing in your community, right? Yeah. If your employees are willing to do that for someone in turn, like that type of transformational nature within a store or a culture or a community, that puts an imprint on that thing that can't go away. Yeah. So.
Well, and each of those people are proud of that. Right, and they tell that story, and that story is then related. Not that you want that direct correlation necessarily, but that story is related to the dealership. Then, right, every one of those people becomes an advocate for what you've built and the culture, and they're representative of it, and they're proud of it, and they're excited to be there, certainly, but also to share it.
Yep, exactly.
Which is, I think, important. Another thing that I find interesting when you're talking about community and being involved in the community is sort of these opportunities for I'll call them adjacent opportunities, right? So you're a car dealer. Yep, you can sell cars, you can service cars, you can help people out with cars. What else can you do, right? Can you build a garage for the high school, right? Could you supply all the tools for the trade school that's nearby? What can you build beyond just the direct relationship?
So much ancillary in it's mobility, right? Like, how are we supporting Liza Borges at Carter Myers? She's always like, how do we support the mobility needs of our community, whatever they are? Yeah. Like, if the community needs bikes, that's mobility, right? If the community, whatever it is,
I think we know a lot of people that go there, start building things, start giving large amounts of money or tool or supplies to a tech program. Sometimes that's very like a far reach, right? That takes now levels of budget approval, levels of planning, levels of outreach. And sometimes I think a lot of the overlooked things are the most basic. And again, I'm going to mention Patrick Abad again, who says we have this really nice big facility and we have these local organizations that need somewhere to meet or they have an event. Let's clear out the showroom and cater their annual meeting. Let's let this unused conference room or training room that we have, let's bring in the regional, police department meeting, and let's feed them well and let's serve them. Let's bring in the teachers.
Yeah.
Right? Let's let the teachers have, it's just space.
Right.
Right? Because a lot of dealers have these big, beautiful facilities. Mm-hmm. And most times, and what they don't understand is that a lot of people don't come into a dealership on a regular basis, right? It's normal for us. When you walk in a big facility and it's got cars inside,
it is.
It's daunting when you have to buy a car. But I think when you set it up, it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It almost feels like a little bit of a museum.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, how good looking are cars?
They're so much fun.
They're works of art.
It's a backdrop.
There. It really is. Yeah.
And also, most people in those situations would be car owners.
Yeah.
And being able to open a car, and it's almost like a little car show. Like when you're not in I'm going to be sold to mode. And so I think that's a real low hanging fruit that most people don't think about. But some good food goes a long way. And if you bring in a group of 50, law enforcement officers, 50 teachers, they're having this meeting, right? And you give them a great meal and have a hospitality mindset and serve them, that, several $1,000s is going to have far more impact than things that would cost you 10 times that amount, like to put a banner up at a local concert venue or something like that. So I think there are things that are available. that it's easy to overlook because it's part of a dealer's regular life. And one is space.
Yeah.
And the ability to cater, and everyone, like,
Right.
dealers know all the caterers in the area. They know the restaurants. They know, they know
Definitely know those
the
things.
steakhouses. They know all the steakhouses.
Exactly.
No, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. That's great. That's great. All right, I want to shift gears a little bit because you guys have a ASOTU CON coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm shocked that you were able to make time to come and hang out for a little bit.
Sorry, no, I'm just kidding.
Well, we really don't. But no, so you moved it this year, right? You had been doing it in the fall the first 2 years.
Yep.
Moved it to late spring, early summer, mid-May.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it a little bit. I want to know a lot about it, but you can start wherever you want. But maybe start with why the shift, right, from fall to late spring.
The shift was actually very practical.
Okay.
September is a very busy month to try to squeeze an event into. And there's just more and more events in the auto space now. And we know that people are busy. They have 20 groups and make meetings and, small events and all these things. So May seemed like a great spot where.
I think there's 7 make meetings in September.
Yeah.
So.
And we found out about all of them after we booked the date last year.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't go. There's a Honda meeting. Oh, I can't go. There's a whatever. So May just made good sense from us, like, hey, let's do this. But there was another element, like we came off so much momentum off of the one we had in September, which was our second. Like the prospect of waiting another year, like we're still a startup, and like so swinging that momentum into like. Not a full year later, but like cut that in half plus a little bit. It just made real practical sense. And it's at the same venue. So a lot of our stuff, like we just had a great experience at the Live Casino Hotel just south of Baltimore. And like the main room is amazing and the tech in the building's amazing. And so we knew we could get it for May. That was a consideration too. September was booked.
Yeah. They were booked for like 3. They gave us like 3 weeks.
Because
and we were like, well,
in automotive,
okay.
we have this little tiny window. It's like, well, it can't be the beginning of the month, can't be at the end of the month, can't be at the end of the week, or really too far in the beginning of the week. Okay, so it's the 15th and 16th in May. Like we can't get more in the middle of nobody has an excuse.
Yes. Yeah, and the like Paul just said, there's a lot of events out there. And between 20 groups and ADA and the beginning of the month and the end of the month, and like, what are we going to send our people to, and what am I going to go to that's practical and that allows us to learn? I think people maybe see our videos, or they see the content that we do, or they see the flat brims and the Nikes and the Pumas and whatever, and it's like these guys are just they're a bunch of fun, right? Which we love to have fun, but I know of multiple product iterations or product innovations that came out of sessions at ASOTU CON in September that are already live with vendors around our country because the dealers heard something or interacted some way with them or with the content to drive a net new change, right? Or connections that are like, people are like, if I didn't have that over the last 7 months, I wouldn't have resolved to do X in our dealership because I would have never met them in a 20 group or my make meeting because it's too localized, right? I got to see outside of what it is, and we Paul and I, our team hates us and loves us for it all at the same time because we take a lot of pride and ownership in actually curating literally every single panel because we want to see these unique perspectives from across the industry put together in a way that serves the people that are listening to the conversation, right? Because you got 25 podcasts that serve the retail industry. We have 6 of them. You've got webinars for days, whether it be broad scope webinars or product specific webinars. You can listen to content all the time. So why engage? What's a unique engagement with a group of people that look at that and look at the ASOTU verse, as we call it, as like people like me do things like this. And so you get in the room, it's like there's a heart, there's a mindset that's aligned. All right. Also, not just that, but we're providing content and building content in a way that's structured for innovation and progression instead of just historical looking. Like, this is what I did. Look, It's like, what are we going to do next?
Yeah. So go a little deeper on the format for me. So, somebody wants to come. I assume you're still selling tickets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So somebody wants to come. What do they expect? Because we've all been to big shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've been to 20 groups. We've been to smaller shows too, regional shows. We've been to vendor shows. There's all these different types, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you started this for a reason. I assume the reason is you saw a void in something that you could fill.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the format like? Because I assume it's at least slightly different than, or it's framed up to be slightly different than anything that's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similar. There's a lot of similarities. It's a place that you go and you stay overnight and you wake up and you gather together and you hear from people who are speaking from stage and you have some conversations. When we approach it, we looked at a bunch of events because we like to go to other events too.
Right.
So events like South by Southwest, VCon, right? And we're like, what are the things about those communities when they gather that seems to have everyone walking away? I'm going to say changed, right? But it's not a Tony Robbins conference, right? We might have some drips of that in there, but walk away changed, meaning there was something that they heard that moved their perspective. They met other people that could help guide them there. And now they have this relationship coming out of the event that we're on phone calls, text messages, right? Like, so there's it's a buzzword and I hate using it because it's become a buzzword, but community is like a lot of people say that. And the best compliment I ever got was when we were day one of ASOTU CON last year, and somebody I didn't know came in, found out about it through like the Washington Area Auto Dealer Association or something. He said, "You know what?" He goes, "A lot of people say they have community." He goes, "I've been here for 2 hours, and you actually have one." And so the format is it's a familiar format.
Okay.
There's a main stage. There's some breakout studios where like we have different topics. We have a live podcast stage. There is a trade show floor light,
Okay.
right? Where it's a place where you can kind of like have a home base if you're an industry partner, right? And a booth and a table. We also have other things like a swag shop where we hand print shirts and people actually wear the shirts. And like we always say, it's a big deal when people are willing to spend money for your swag.
Yeah.
Because it says something about them. And there's obviously all the impromptu like dinner meetings and people hanging out. I mean, I woke up the second day and I came downstairs and I realized there were people that were hanging out in the same place that they were when I went to sleep, talking.
It was nuts.
Right? Not gambling, not drinking, talking.
Yep.
And
That's
this
wild.
is and it was like they found the value to do that at the event. So similar format. Obviously we do like to have fun.
Yep.
Right. So we're gonna have F1
And we like to put on
simulators
a production, like we light every single room, we video every single
That's a
room.
difference, too.
There's a element of I've never walked into a breakout session that looks and feels like this.
Okay.
There's experience.
I can guarantee that there's not a single other breakout session at any other automotive conference that feels like a breakout session that we have.
We're going to do a pit. We're having 2 pitch stages this year.
Okay.
So we had a clubhouse room for a while. Kyle founded it called Pitch Tank, where you could go on and do a 3-minute pitch for your product, and then there'd be some questions, and then like you hear, and we believe that every dealer wants to be pitched. They don't want to get stuck in a 20-minute conversation that they don't want to be in.
Yeah.
Right. So we're providing a space for our industry partners to say, this is what I do. And I think there is often a lot of confusion around what products do because you see logos, you see trade show booths at NADA, and you don't really know what a company does. But if I can sit in a room for 45 minutes and hear 10 or 12 at once and have people I trust ask intelligent questions about it, that's a good use of my time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
It's a good idea.
And so we're doing 2 pitch stages because we want to speed up the level of communication. And that could be between dealers and industry partners. There's so many ways to do it. Everyone's not a good fit for everybody. We understand that.
Yep.
So we want to have the people find each other fast or understand we're not a good fit fast. So then you can spend your time with the people who are a good fit, which is kind of alludes back to Kyle, like us legitimately seeing major platforms change things and add solutions because of a conversation that started at ASOTU CON. So I feel like that's the best kept secret. We didn't even know about it.
Yeah, we had 3 people tell us. I was like, you did what? With who? And they already did it live, and it came out of that.
And they're about to roll it out to everybody
It's
across the
nuts.
country.
Yeah. So.
No, that's great. That's great. So, I mean, you guys obviously have a lot of runway in front of you, but just listening to the way that you're talking about the community and the people that come and the conversations that are had, do you get the sense that there's a specific type of individual or, a specific person that gets the most out of coming. I assume it's not for it's not for the all million people that are in the automotive industry, right?
Yeah.
Like what is that kind of, or what's your sense, if you have one, of kind of that core, I'll call it audience?
Yeah, I think, well, one, like we know that building anything that is built on the basis of good and not ego or sensationalism is very, very hard, right? It does whittle down to like a very, very small set of people that really, really get it at that level.
Sure.
I mean, we were having this conversation last night, literally. And so I think that it, like, one, when you get there, you would probably look around at the dealers and start to see some similarities in their retail or service process, right? Because it's probably of the more progressive. It probably
and their employment process
has a much more progressive employment and onboarding process, and you would see in their HR documents review protocols and things like that. You probably have a slightly younger leaning operating crew.
Okay.
I'm not talking like 20s, maybe,
Sure.
right? But typically, maybe it's a second gen dealer or something like that, because there really is this pursuit of a very, very forward thinking technology, very forward thinking HR policies, and also I would say. Dealers and dealer groups that are not caught up in themselves, they're caught up in others. That like all of them might actually be able to put in their core values, we love people more than we love cars. And there's probably some dealers in the country that could look at that and go, cars pay the bills.
Yeah.
And if that's the truth, they're probably not close enough to the love people more than you love cars to make it. And that's okay right now. We want to see that change, and that's why we're doing this. But right now, that's the reality.
Well, it's about finding the others. Definitely the common thread I see or some of the common threads, people on the hunt for the next thing, right? Like, what's the next iteration of my business or this trajectory?
Yep.
I can find, and that could be someone of any age.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
oh, for sure.
Because we have some old dogs on the hunt.
Oh, we have some old dogs, no doubt.
And they're on the hunt, and they're like, oh, I love being around this energy, because they're just, innovation is in their DNA, and they've been innovating for the last 50 years. And they're like, what's the next one? And like you said, a lot of the second gen, people who are willing to try something new, people who are really willing to like deploy outside automotive retail tactics inside automotive. I think that is a high concentration, which is why we bring in the guests and the keynotes that we do. This year is a guy named Will Guidara, New York Times bestselling author of Unreasonable Hospitality.
Super hot right now.
Yeah.
So
it's nuts. It's like every third post on LinkedIn.
I'm so excited about that.
It's wild.
So when you booked him, was this just him taking off? I mean,
here's the backstory on that. So Simon Sinek, do you know who Simon Sinek is? Right, a lot of people do. This is the first book on Simon Sinek's publishing label.
Okay.
And I had some interaction with Simon's business, being a brand instructor for them during COVID. And so we got pre-releases of the book, and they said, hey, we're going to do this publish. Here's this book. It's from my friend Will Guidara. And Simon's like, this is why it's cool. It was 2 years ago. And I read the book, and I was like, this book's amazing. Flipped it to Kyle. Kyle's like, this book is amazing. And so we were going to have him at ASOTU CON last year.
Yeah.
And so... But he had like a speaking engagement in like the Cayman Islands the next day. I don't know, but he was flying in private, and I'm sure they were paying him more money than we were.
Without a doubt.
So it was like, I know Baltimore's in September sounds awesome at all, but so actually we had him. So then when we knew May, like we got right on it and say, let's try to lock him down. And just I think it's the serendipity of the moment. Is that unlike a lot of New York Times best-selling books where they pop and then they fizzle.
Right.
His is the opposite, because it's so substantively connected to how humans think, is that we're seeing this trajectory. And now, like, we saw the Walzer Group bring him in. We saw Mazda bring him in. And so
he was
like,
on Fallon.
He was on Jimmy Fallon for Valentine's Day. And so, like, we're just excited. We're going to be in New York City with him on the March 26th. I don't know when this is airing, but March 26th we're going. And we're going to do some podcasting with him. And again, back to that original premise of bringing hospitality mindset into the industry, understanding we have these opportunities and they don't have to be expensive things. They just have to be intentional things.
Yes.
We're hoping that, everybody knows how they feel when hospitality is right, whether at a hotel or at a restaurant. And so, again, people who crave bringing that level of thinking into their business, whether it's on the employment side or the consumer side, those kind of people migrate toward ASOTU CON, and we do our best to deliver.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, that's great, and it's great to see it continuing to grow. And this is year 3, and you're probably already halfway home on planning for year 4. I'm guessing.
Nah, you're so generous.
Yeah,
I think we
floated
have
more
one
ideas.
city.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
We floated one city because likely we'll outgrow our spot this year. 600 is kind of our max at this one. So we're floating some cities, but that's as far as it's got.
Okay.
I mean, we're still a startup, so it's like, I don't know what's all the way over there. We'll worry about that when we get over this hill.
That's right.
Oh, no, that's great. That's great. What haven't we talked about, guys? It's been a good, fun conversation. Anything we haven't touched on that you want to before we jump out of here?
I would love to just talk about More Than Cars, the docuseries. I know we talked about it in the beginning.
Yeah.
What it actually is, for those of you who may not have heard, is a docuseries that talks about the inspiring stories in real car dealerships. It is our effort to, like we talked a lot about brand connection, what builds a macro brand. It's our effort to build and improve and elevate the macro brand of car dealers. Everyone hears the bad stuff fast.
Yes.
And frequently.
Well, or they just assume it, right? It's not even like, sometimes it's not even stories that you hear. Sometimes it's just assumptions.
No,
like,
right. It is literally now a cultural assumption that car dealers are, I don't know.
Yeah.
And
if it's not bad, it's at least a recoil. Right?
It's like, I'd rather not. And our experience, and I know the experience of so many people in this industry, is that some of the most generous, inspirational, caring, empathetic people that we know in life are car dealers and people that work in dealerships. And if my kids were ever lost in a city and they were scared, they would see a car dealership and go there before they would go to a hospital, or because they would think there are good people in there that will help me. That's right. And that's the reality and the truth. And so we were like, it's just tragic that that's it. And we believe in this industry. We're 100% bought into this industry. And we're like, I feel like we've always wanted as an industry some way to do this. And, like NADA has had PR campaigns. But the tough part about that is there's such a vested interest that it feels like a PR campaign, right? Like paid for by our sponsors, right? And so we kind of just took what we see in culture and the media and the types of shows that people navigate toward, right? Like Duck Dynasty, like Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, like Dude Perfect. And, like who are the things that people pay attention to, and how do we reintroduce society to this amazing group of people that are car dealers? And so make a docuseries. Kyle and I go to dealerships all over the country. We tell the human stories. The setting is a dealership. And there may be a trick shot or two in there.
Yeah, and I think we see the series as being both a beacon internally to say, here is the best. Like this is the best of the best that we can find, and for internally for the industry to be a beacon to say this is what we can be all called to. This can be a North Star, but we also see it as a megaphone. That allows consumers at some point, we're already in the works of bringing this to working on both Apple TV and Amazon Prime. Yeah. And so we see it as a megaphone for the industry, similar to how F1 saw it for the racing industry with Netflix, or I don't know who started the conversation, right?
Yeah.
But we see it as a megaphone to say, look, no, there are beautiful stories inside this thing, stories of life change, of pain, and of joy.
Yeah.
We've seen that in the 4 episodes we've shot. Of fun, right? We've moved some lot cars. We've done some trick shots, right?
I've yet to win one of the competitions.
Yep.
No?
Not a single competition.
I've yet to win one. I was so close on one.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. And
we got to quit.
We just love it.
I'm building my I have this.
I think he's just hustling me.
I'm hustling them all because it's like everyone loves the underdog more. So everyone's like, no, I don't want Kyle to win. We love Paul. Like Kyle always wins. I'm just working that. So when I win, it's going to be so sweet, whatever that one is. If
You just got to pick the thing you're better than him at and line it
you
up.
know, I thought I did, and it just didn't work out. maybe we need to do like a soccer one or a tennis one where like people would think you would obviously win.
Flip it.
And then for
right.
some reason you just choke because I get in your head. And so we've released 2 episodes so far. Episode 3 is coming out this month. Episode 4 will be released next month. And then season 2 is kind of in planning phase. We're working on funding and all the things it takes to like shoot this. And, you know, we have our video crew from Nashville that travels around and we just go into dealership. Like, it's so much fun. It's free to watch. Morethancars.tv right now is where it lives. But, you know, hopefully pretty soon it'll be on Amazon Prime and Apple TV.
No, that's great. I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think everybody else does too, even if they haven't seen it. They should. You know, it's a fun way to share the great stories that are out there. So
it's fun to make.
No, that's great. Good deal. Anything else?
I mean, no, there's so much.
No, I could talk to you guys
fun,
for hours. I really could.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much to unpack, and you guys are great. So I appreciate you taking time. But it's been fun, and we'll have to do it again because I'm telling you, we probably got another 20 hours of
easy
of
conversation.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the hospitality.
Thanks for having us. It's been fun to be around this amazing space.
Yeah, the Reynolds
Not just
HQ.
this, but the whole Reynolds HQ. Like, it's an operation.
And I don't know if you've never been here. There's like a very Disney World like experience. I won't spoil it in case you come in here, but like I was truly like surprised and delighted.
Truly
when I went
taken
through
back.
this.
A delightful moment.
You have to come here to see it. Though.
Whether you're a client or not, you should take them up on the opportunity to come out here for sure. Yeah.
I appreciate it, guys. And again, thanks for your time, and we'll catch up again soon.
Absolutely.
It's our pleasure.
Wow, that was a fun one. I could talk to those 2 guys for hours, probably days if we had enough water and coffee. But, really appreciate Paul and Kyle joining me. I hope you got as much out of that conversation as I did. Before we hop off, don't forget you can watch or listen to all episodes of Connected on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify podcasts. And make sure to hit subscribe so you're notified every other week when new episodes are released. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.